The results of the Banaji and Hardin study suggest that people have unconscious, automatic gender biases when it comes to things like career stereotypes. But do these biases actually impact how people behave when they're making real-world employment decisions? We know that in many fields, men are more likely to be hired and promoted than women. However, it can be difficult to prove that this reflects a bias against women and not real differences between male and female applicants. In other words, if we see a correlation between gender and employment, it's hard to be sure that the differences in hiring and promotion are caused by the employer's gender bias and not by some third factor. But it's hard to do true experiments on the role of gender in employment, because this would require taking a group of potential employees and manipulating their gender. Of course, it would be both impractical and unethical to randomly change people's gender. There are, however, some very well-controlled studies where resumes are sent to potential employers, and the name of the potential employee is randomly determined to be a man's name or a woman's name. In other words, we don't change the gender of the applicant, we just change the name on the application. Here's a study of this nature that I find particularly disturbing because it finds evidence of gender bias among science professors when they're evaluating potential research assistants. Science professors like me have been trained to be objective, and most of us are very much against gender discrimination at a conscious level. So it would be a big deal to show that we unconsciously discriminate against women in hiring. In this study, the researchers created a fake set of application materials for a recent college graduate who had a very good preparation for a job as a research assistant. Not so good that the person seemed ridiculously well qualified, but quite good. The researchers then sent these materials to 127 professors in biology, chemistry, and physics departments at major universities. The name on the application was John for half of the applications and Jennifer for the other half. Otherwise, the application materials were identical. This made it possible for the researchers to perfectly equate the information that the professors were using to judge the quality of the applicants. Only the gender of the name on the application varied. Each professor was sent one set of application materials with either the name John or the name Jennifer as the name of the applicant. The professors were asked to use a scale of 1 to 7 to judge how competent the applicant seemed and how likely they would be themselves to hire that applicant. They were also asked what salary would be appropriate if the applicant were hired. The professors thought they were evaluating a real applicant, and they didn't realize that they were participating in a study of gender biases, although they were informed of this later. So, different professors were given applications that were identical except for the name of the applicant, and the question was whether their appraisal of the applicant would differ depending on whether they thought the applicant was a man or a woman. What do you think happened? After all, the applications were identical except for the name. Keep in mind that the professors thought they were evaluating a real person, a recent college graduate, for a job as a research assistant. That could be you someday. And these research assistant positions are often stepping stones to graduate school. If you get a position as a paid research assistant in a good lab for a couple of years after you graduate, you're in a much better position to get into medical school, veterinary school, dental school, graduate school, etc. So if professors are biased against women when they hire research assistants, this could potentially have a real impact on the career trajectories of women versus men in science-related fields. I really wish it weren't true, but the study found that the professors did indeed show a substantial gender bias. On average, the professors rated the applicant as being less competent if they thought the applicant was a woman than if they thought the applicant was a man. And they indicated that they'd be less likely to hire the applicant if they thought the applicant was a woman than if they thought the applicant was a man. And they estimated a lower starting salary if they thought that the application came from a woman. Like I said, I really wish these results weren't true. Some of the professors were men and some were women, and both showed approximately the same amount of bias. Here are the average ratings from the male and female faculty for the competence of the applicants. You can see that both the male and female faculty rated the applicant as more competent if the name on the application was male than if it was female. And they also rated the applicant as somebody they'd be more likely to hire if the name on the application was male than if it was female. And they estimated a higher starting salary if the name on the application was male than if it was female. So Both male and female science professors gave more positive appraisals, on average, if they thought the applicant was a man than if they thought the applicant was a woman, even though it was exactly the same application except for the name. I feel personally embarrassed that science professors, people much like me, showed this kind of gender bias. However, people like you, that is, college students, also showed gender bias when evaluating the teaching of male versus female professors. The study shown here looked at student evaluations of teaching in an online college course at a large state university, much like UC Davis. The class was set up so that 30% of the grade came from online discussion groups. The students never actually met the instructors for these discussion groups, so it was possible to randomly determine whether the students in a given discussion section thought they had a male instructor or a female instructor. In other words, the same actual person led multiple discussion groups, but some groups thought they had a male instructor and other groups thought they had a female instructor. Here are the actual ratings. Students who thought they had a male instructor gave a higher overall rating than students who thought they had a female instructor, even though it was exactly the same person. When this overall score was broken down into individual components, the supposedly male instructor scored significantly higher than the supposedly female instructor on fairness, promptness, and praise. But it was the same person. Why does this happen? It's hard to know, but part of it's likely the result of cultural stereotypes of what professors are supposed to be like and what men and women are like. Try going to images.google.com and typing in college professor. Here's what I got when I did this. The top images are almost all men, even though there are almost equal numbers of male and female professors. So when you're filling out your course evaluations, you should try to avoid letting gender biases creep in. For example, you might expect female professors to be more prompt than male professors, and you might therefore rate a female professor more negatively than a male professor if they're actually equally prompt. Also, both my own personal experience and a variety of studies indicate that female professors tend to get rated on the basis of irrelevant factors such as their clothing and hairstyles. I've received teaching evaluations from thousands of students over the years, and I've never gotten a single comment about how I dress or what my hair looks like. But I know lots of female professors who've gotten comments about this. Why should this matter in your evaluation of somebody's teaching effectiveness? So, when you're evaluating professors, try to think carefully about their actual teaching effectiveness and avoid irrelevant factors like clothing, and try not to have different standards for men and for women. And when I'm evaluating applications for research assistant positions, I'll try to focus on objective evidence of competence and avoid gender biases that might favor male applicants over female applicants. Do we have a deal?